Okay, welcome everyone to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard. For the second time, beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion. Superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. And if I'm not mistaken, we stopped at page 288.
Page 288, and the reason, yes.
The reason, okay. So we've been following in this chapter. Amazing chapter. We've been following the soul from Hevel, the son of Adam, that was reincarnated in Haran, the brother of Avraham. I'm sorry, Hevel was killed by his brother. Avraham's brother Haran was killed in the furnace by King Nimrod for believing in Hashem, or saying that he believes in Hashem. He was then reincarnated in Aharon, the brother of Moshe, who stood up to the people with the golden calf, but didn't put his life on the line. And then we followed different incarnations. He was in Yavitz, mentioned in Divrei Hayamim. Yavitz was the generation after Aharon. Yavitz is identified with Asniel ben Kenaz, who was the first, who was the judge after Yehoshua. One moment.
Excuse me.
And was a great leader of the people. Yavitz was reincarnated as a later judge named Tola ben Pua, was the judge after Avimelech. So just a few generations, so just a few judges later. And then he was in the prophet Shmuel. And after Shmuel, Uriah Hachiti, who was the one that King David sent to the front line. And King David married Uriah's wife, ex-wife, Bathsheba.
And Aaron's sons were also reincarnated in Uriah the Hittite, which is important.
Did we say
not Evan Avihu.
Was it a partial incarnation?
No, they were all joined together.
Okay.
And this was so the rectification could take place with respect to Adam and Avihu, and they had one for the incense and two for the lack of being fruitful and multiplying. And both of those deficits, I want to call it that, became rectified.
Okay, good, thanks. Good, thanks. And then we had a second Uriah in the time of Yirmiyah, and he's only mentioned in I think 5 psukim, that he echoed the prophecy of Yirmiyah. If I remember correctly, that Zion would be plowed under, and and the king put out an arrest warrant for him. He ran away to Egypt. The king had him extradited. King Yehoiakim had him extradited back to Israel, where he was executed. And we talk about King Yehoiakim was one of the worst of the kings. So we're following.
I think we're a little before then. I'm not sure if we were at 289 or 288. Alan says 288.
288.
The reason I marked it as soon as he mentioned it.
And that's
Okay.
what I have. That's what I have also.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. I must have read ahead. All right, fine, good.
yeah, you probably read ahead because, whoops.
Yeah, I
I
included
didn't
some.
finish for today.
I mean,
Okay.
we were on a precipice, so I read ahead. We were on a precipice.
That's fine. I also had the beginning of the next note.
Yeah.
That we didn't get to. Okay. So now, before Uriah, who lived in the time of Yirmiyah and the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, Nadav and Avihu had been reincarnated into Eliyahu Hanavi. Nadav and Avihu died when they offered incense called Ketoret, before they were instructed to do so. Eliyahu Hanavi lived, I think, around 100 years before the destruction, and this Uriah lived immediately before the destruction, just a few years. The Torah is ambiguous regarding the fault of Nadav and Avihu, and simply says they offered before Hashem an alien fire that he had not commanded them. Eliyahu is famous for a challenge with 400 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Elisha poured buckets of water over the altar, and a fire came from heaven and consumed the sacrifice. We did have this story somewhere in Apples from the Orchard. I don't remember which parsha or what the topic was, but it did explain the story in the Arizal did explain the story. At that time, during the times of the Beis Hamikdash, it was forbidden to bring an offering outside the Beis Hamikdash. Any offering had to be done in the Beis Hamikdash. In fact, we find that the fault of the Jewish people, the Navi writes many times that the king he followed the ways of Hashem. However, he didn't get rid of these altars that people used outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So it was forbidden. Eliyahu, on the other hand, gave this offering on Mount Carmel. So how can this be? The halacha is a prophet may instruct us to violate a mitzvah with two caveats. If it is temporary and it's not idol worship. So if it's idol worship, forget it. The prophet may not do that. If he does, we do not listen. If it's temporary, then we listen to the prophet. And one of the classic examples is this instance, this episode. Eliyahu violated the mitzvah not to bring an offering outside the Beis Hamikdash, to publicly expose the prophets of Baal and turn the people's hearts to Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
To repair the damage of Aaron's sons, who bringing an alien fire, Eliyahu brought an offering that is typically forbidden, being that it was outside the Beis Hamikdash. But in this case, he invoked a fire from heaven, and he caused a great Kiddush Hashem. So with a huge number of people standing around to watch, the prophets of Baal prayed all morning. They cried to Hashem. They cut themselves, and the slaughtered animal lay on the altar. In the afternoon, beginning of the afternoon, Eliyahu Hanavi brought his offering. He slaughtered the animal. He put it on the altar. He told Elisha to drench it with water.
Mhm.
And then he davened to Hashem, and the people watched. A fire came down from heaven and ignited the altar, ignited the sacrifice. The sacrifice burned up and was consumed. And the people cried out in a great revival and inspiration, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. And they then caught the prophets of Baal. They put them to death. They ran to the palace, and I don't remember the details, but they, if I'm not mistaken, they killed the king, his wife, or his mother. I think it was. Does anyone here know what defenestration is?
Defenestration.
Yes.
No.
Make a big mess.
If I'm not mistaken, I hope I have the word right. Defenestration is to kill someone by throwing him out the window.
Oh,
Oh, that's not my exception.
all right.
It was
That's a
very
handy
popular.
little vocab word.
It was very popular in the
Yeah,
I think the
defenestration.
130 years
story.
war,
Yeah, the
1600s.
Yeah.
Okay, you could look up who the dollar is named for, like Schmickenthaler or something, or Schmickelberger. Anyways, he made a stable currency, but then he got defenestrated. No, or he did it to someone else. I don't remember. It was a mess. It was a big mess thing over there. Anyways, so I think that's what happened to the queen or the queen mother, and it was caused a great spiritual revival in Israel at the time under Eliyahu. So Eliyahu, through Eliyahu, through Eliyahu, Nadav and Avihu were repaired for the sin of bringing an alien fire, because he also brought an alien fire, but his was permitted. They still had two of our faults. One, because they died early, they missed out on many mitzvahs they could have performed. And second, they did not fulfill the mitzvah of having children. Therefore, they were reincarnated into Uriah the Kohen. Alan, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The reason why Aaron's sons had to be reincarnated into Uriah the priest was because they had been reincarnated by themselves into the prophet Elijah, as we have explained elsewhere. In this way, they rectified their turning away from evil, that is their sin, by atoning for their sin and offering unsolicited incense through Eliyahu on Mount Carmel, when he caused fire to descend from heaven in order to sanctify Hashem's name. Nadav and Avihu had offered a sacrifice, incense, in an illegal manner as an expression of their own ecstatic feelings. In Eliyahu's day, he also offered an illegal sacrifice when he contested the prophets of Baal on Har Carmel, since it is illegal to offer a sacrifice anywhere other than in the temple, once the temple has been built. But since Eliyahu did so in order to sanctify Hashem's name in public, his act was not only considered an infringement of the law, but also rectified the sin of Nadav and Avihu. Offering the illegal sacrifice for Hashem's sake rectified their offering of an illegal sacrifice for their own sakes. Go on.
Let me do a little more. Uriah's soul was mainly from Aaron, but also from Aaron's sons. As we said, Uriah was killed to atone for Aaron's not giving up his life at the golden calf. Go ahead.
Nonetheless, they still needed to rectify the lack of fulfillment of positive commandments that they should have fulfilled in the rest of their natural lives. And similarly, the commandment of being fruitful and multiplying that they did not fulfill, as it is stated. And they did not have children, for they were single. They therefore were reincarnated now into Uriah the priest in order to rectify this. Still, the main aspect of Uriah, the priest's soul derived from Aaron, who was reincarnated into him in order to rectify his second sin that still had not been rectified, that is, to be killed in the sanctification of Hashem's name. Nadav and Abihu joined with him in a temporary sort of way for the said purpose.
Okay. I think I'm aligned here. When King Jehoiakim executed Uriah the Kohen, Aaron's misdeeds were finally corrected. The souls of Nadav and Abihu joined Uriah, since their deaths were in part because Aaron did not give up his life at the golden calf, and they therefore missed out on many years of mitzvahs. So really, Uriah his soul was from Aaron, but Nadav and Abihu kind of attached themselves. They latched on also because they were involved here. Go ahead, and Gershon, thus.
Thus Uriah the priest was killed by King Joachim, and Aaron was totally rectified of both sins. Nadav and Abihu, who were there only incidentally, did not feel the pain of the murder at all, only Aaron. They joined up with him only because since Aaron caused their death, it follows that he was also responsible for the fact that they did not fulfill all the positive commandments they were supposed to in their lifetimes. It was therefore necessary that they be rectified by him, and for this reason they joined with him in this incarnation.
Okay. Now, so with the execution of Uriah and the full repair of Aaron, Aaron was in a position to fully repair the souls of his sons. Until Aaron was repaired, he could not finish this repair of his children. Go ahead, Gershon.
After Aaron had been completely rectifying the murder of Uriah the priest, he then had the power to rectify his sons properly. Before this, however, while he himself still needed to be rectified, he could not do this.
Okay. I don't remember where was we read about Uriah.
Uriah the second.
Oh, here it is. I put it down. A minute. The footnote was it's not here, so I wrote it myself. It says that Uriah gave prophecy on the city and on the land, exactly like Yirmiyah. That is, Oh, okay. I saw somewhere that he also says, here we are. Go back a few lines. Micha the Morashti said prophecy in the day of Chizkiah. He said, so says Hashem, Sion Sadeh Techaresh, Zion will be plowed under, Yerushalayim Iyim Tiyeh, and Jerusalem will be, I don't know what Iyim is, and Harabayis Levamos Yar, and the Temple Mount will be will turn into a forest, or a grove of trees. So it seems that, and that was much earlier. So it says that he said something similar to that. Okay, so now, so therefore, the three of them, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, I guess, now that Aaron is able to finish repairing his sons, they're all three again incarnated into Zechariah ben Yeverechyahu, or in other places, his name is given as Berechia. So the Ye at the beginning and the Hu at the end is dropped. Zechariah's book of prophecy is the second to last prophet. There are several prophets, Zechariah, at least two. So we have to know who's who. One of them we had, I think it was a few months ago. I don't know if we had him in this chapter or not. I don't think so. I think we had him before. This Zechariah is the one that's more well known. He has a book of prophecy that's on his name. It's an eponymous book. Okay, another big word. And he's the second to last of the prophets. The last three are Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And they were at the end of the exile, Purim time, and then the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash. And their books are part of what we call the Trei Asar, the 12 minor prophets. Their books are smaller. Zechariah rebuked the people for not rushing to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash when Darius II gave permission. Now, Yeshaya lived at the time of King Chizkiah, about 100 years before the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, because King Chizkiah saw he would have an evil son, so he didn't get married and didn't have children. Until he got sick, Yeshaya rebuked him and said, "It's not your business what your son's going to do. You got to do your thing." So the King Chizkiah married Yeshaya's daughter. They had a son, Menashe, who killed his grandfather, Yeshaya, or ordered his assassination. But in any case, so Yeshaya lived at the time of King Chizkiah. During King Chizkiah, Jerusalem was threatened by King Sancherib. And Sancherib had an opportunity from Hashem to march on Jerusalem. He waited and time ran out. Time ran out, statute of limitations. And that night, and then Jerusalem was doomed. King Chizkiah was a great tzaddik, and that night was Pesach. In the morning, the entire army of Sancherib was dead. COVID.
Mhm.
Okay. Whatever it was, epidemic, this, that, the entire army was dead, and Sancherib was left alone. He went back home where his kids killed him. So I think they were worried he was going to sacrifice them or something. So they killed him first. So in any case, and then Sancherib exiled before marching on the country of Yehuda, he marched on the northern kingdom, Israel, and he exiled the 10 tribes. And that's about 100 years before the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So that was the time of Yeshaya. Yeshaya writes, "I appointed trustworthy witnesses for myself, Uriah the Kohen and Zechariah, son of Yeverechia." He wrote Yeshaya, Hashem told him to write like a scroll, and he started the scroll, and he said, "I'm going to appoint them to come and sign it." Now, Uriah lived at the time of King Yehoiakim and Yirmiah before the destruction. So let's say 80, 90 years later, after Yeshaya. Zechariah said his prophecy at the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash, 70 years after the destruction. So this is way after Yeshaya. How do we reconcile that? How does Yeshaya say, I'm going to have Uriah the Kohen and Zechariah ben Yevarechia, who sign it or add to it the scroll if they were much later? So some say, no problem. They were alive at the time of Yeshaya, and they were still alive at the later time. Others say that Yeshaya left space on the scroll for them to sign in their time, when after they'll be born and they'll grow up and be prophets. Then they'll know when to finish the scroll. In either case, it is strange. The question here is strange that Yeshaya would choose both of them as witnesses. But now we understand their connection to each other. And they weren't even in the same era. Now with the Arizal, we understand their connection to each other, as we've explained. Both were reincarnations of Aaron and involved in repairing the faults of Aaron and his sons. Jim, would you like to continue? 289. Thus,
the three of them were then incarnated again into Zechariah ben Yevarechiahu. Yevarechiahu. There you go.
So easy.
So easy. Who was
Naturally.
also,
God bless you.
was also
Gesundheit.
yeah, just as the three of them were. Aaron then rectified his sons completely when the three of them were together in this incarnation. This is the mystical meaning of the verse. I will call to testify for myself trustworthy witnesses. Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Yevarechiahu. What have these two to do with each other? They do not even know each other, inasmuch as they were in two different generations. But for the reason we have given, they were both rooted in the same incarnation. They are called God's witnesses. So in Uriah, Aaron was not rectified completely. He prophesied about the destruction of the temple, as it is written, Zion will be plowed like a field. But when he was reincarnated into Zechariah, he was rectified completely. He therefore prophesied about the tranquility and rebuilding of Zion, as our sages have commented on the verse quoted.
okay, thanks. That's what I wrote here. Since the souls were not completely repaired in Uriah, he said prophecy that Sion would be plowed like a field. But they were finally fully repaired in Zechariah. So his prophecy was about Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash, rebuilt and thriving. Now, so I'll say this. The Torah says that Aaron took Elisheva, daughter of Aminadab, sister of Nachshon. Nachshon was, you remember, the leader of Yehuda. He was the one who led the Jews into the Red Sea, and because of him, the sea split. So Aaron's wife was Elisheva, the sister of Nachshon. And we're going to compare that to David's wife, whose name was Bat Sheva. And Bat Sheva, the one who was involved, Uriah, the Hittite. Okay, Jim, go ahead. We will now explain.
We will now explain the verse. And Aaron took Elisheva, the daughter of Aminadab, the sister of Nachshon, for a wife, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Itamar. By understanding the...
Okay, hold on.
Right. Yep.
So we compare the two wives. Elisheva and Bathsheba. And Aaron married Elisheva, and then David ended up taking Bathsheba from Uriah, and David married her himself. Elisheva, so Sheva means 7, and Elisheva is God of 7, whatever that means. And maybe it explains here, I don't know. Bathsheba means the daughter of 7. So Abigail, go ahead by understanding.
By understanding the incident of Bathsheba, King David's wife, who was married first to Uriah the Hittite, we will understand this verse better. For just as Aaron married Elisheva, the daughter of Amminadab, so too, when he was reincarnated as Uriah the Hittite, he married Bathsheba. It follows that Elisheva and Bathsheba were of the same essence. Both of them personified Rochel, the Nukva of Zeranpin, who is rectified by the Sephira of Hesed, which is personified by Aaron, who is therefore called the escort of the bride, as mentioned in the Zohar.
So if you remember, we talked about Rachel and Leah, and these are names for parts of the spheras, for the 2 feminine spheras. Rachel is known as the revealed world. Leah is the hidden world. Revealed world, revealed world is speech. Hidden world is thought. And in spheras, Rachel, the revealed world, is Malchus, and Leah, the hidden world and thought, is Bina. Bina is the feminine component of intellect, and Malchus is the feminine component of the Midos. So Yaakov is the Ze'er Anpin, the 6 central Midos. Leah Bina pulled the Midos towards her. Yaakov was drawn to Malchus, and after he was away for 20 years and came back to Israel, Rachel died, and then he was on the higher level and married Leah, meaning that he was suitable for Bina. That's what we learned about before. So here it says that both of them were like Rachel, which is Malchus, Nukva of Zeranpin, of Malchus. And so Aaron, in his lifetime, Aaron married her, and then in the later lifetime, Uriah, the Hittite, married her. Now, the Gemara, so in their names, so Bat is the daughter, or I'm not sure, it may imply undeveloped or immature. And Elisheva is the name of Hashem, Aleph Lamed. The Gemara says that she was destined to marry David. Actually, there's a whole story. The Navi says that David saw her bathing on the rooftop. But the Gemara explains further that she was bathing behind a curtain, and something happened there. The curtain got moved aside, and that's when David was able to see her. So she was washing her hair, if I'm not mistaken, and David. So David married, and then David called for her and married her. David at this time is 57 years old. He's looking at his children and doesn't see anyone who's suitable to take over as king after David dies. This worries him very much. There is no question that prophetically he saw that he is destined to have a child with Bathsheba that would be worthy of being king. indeed was Shlomo. There's no question. David was always guided by godly things. What it says is, though, that David married her early. If he would have waited, then she would have come to him in a much nicer way. But he didn't. He kind of pushed it. He rushed it, and because of that, the whole scandal happened.
Same sin they always commit, right?
What?
That's the Sodic sin. Pushing, seeing the holiness and going for it too fast.
Interesting to think where else was like that. Are you thinking of other places?
Yeah. So, and I'm blanking on them because I've thought about this a lot in the past.
It sounds familiar.
Like, I think Adam and Chava are an example, but
they were,
yes.
according to one explanation, I should say, they would have. They were going to prepare to use. They were preparing to use the tree of knowledge for with grapes. They're preparing to use it for wine for Kiddush. It would have been permitted. It was only forbidden to eat that day. They would have been allowed to have it that night, and they partook of it early to make sure that it was okay for Kiddush. So that would be one example.
So does this story of Bathsheba, does this give her room for being sneous? She's just washing her hair.
Most probably what she did was very typical for the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't
usual.
No, she was doing what was normally done.
So he just saw her and the lust was for Mashiach.
Yeah.
That's what he didn't control.
Yes. That's one way of explaining it.
What's another example of, I think of Tamar. I don't know if Tamar you would say that.
I have to think of that, of not waiting, of pushing and not waiting.
Thinking of a way, Shaul, he thought of a way to do something to honor God, but it was totally the wrong way to do it. It wasn't according to God.
Well, he didn't wait the 7 days. Shmuel told him to wait till he gets back, and he didn't wait. But that wasn't out of that. I haven't seen that. That's out of
godliness,
good intentions.
Good, yeah, for good reasons.
Well, look what Lot's daughters did. They rushed. They didn't see if they thought their world was at an end. They had it repopulated. If they'd waited to see other people around.
There were people that left Egypt early,
right?
From the tribe of Ephraim, who later were revived in the dry bones, the dead bones. They left Egypt.
The tribe of Benjamin clashing with a Melech is another not waiting.
With the Philistines.
Yeah, with the Philistines, and they getting wiped out. Anyway.
Yeah. Is there any sense that Rachel, when she advised, or not Rachel, Rivka and Yaakov, is there any sense that he shouldn't have done that?
No, I don't want to get up on a big tangent.
All right, sorry.
But it's something to think about, because it sounds like it does occur other places. We suggested a few possibilities where the problem that they did was they rushed things. So by rushing it, though, he made a big mess of it because their divorce wasn't official. It wasn't clear that the divorce was official. It came out that it was divorce retroactive. So, and incidentally, so David is this time was 57 around. He dies at the age of 70. So and Shlomo was 12 years old when he took over as king. So we understand why David was getting nervous. I don't know if you guys realize this, but Bathsheba, I'm sorry. So Bathsheba is, I think Bathsheba is also the name of a type of fig. And figs that are unripe are called pagan. So it says that David took her as his wife when she was still pagan. She was still unripe. She wasn't ready for him yet. But I don't know if you realize, at the time, Bathsheba was young. She was only 12 years old.
Oh,
Which
That I didn't know.
at that time could have been acceptable. For our time, obviously not. But at that time, I think it may have been common.
Unless
In
you
fact-
live in Appalachia.
What?
Unless you live in Appalachia.
Yeah, Eastern Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
And the and her grandfather was I think 35, 36 years old, and he was David's closest he was like the top advisor in the country, no question, by the name of Achitophel. He joined Avshalom's rebellion, and when he saw that it wasn't going, when he saw his advice wasn't taken, he hung himself. So that was Bathsheba's grandfather. In any case, Elisheva, the wife of Aaron, so her name has Hashem's name in it, Aleph Lamed Kel, and we've mentioned before that Chesed Kel Kol Hayom. Kel we usually translate the Almighty, and the kindness of the Almighty is all day. Therefore, this name of Hashem, Aleph Lamed, is a name of Chesed. It's a name of kindness, and that was the as she was in the time of Aaron. Okay, Abigail, the last paragraph.
there is, however, a difference between them. For Bathsheba was initially unrectified. As our sages say of King David, he partook of her before she was ripe, as we will explain later. Elisheva, in contrast, contained in her name the letters Aleph Lamed, spelling Kale, a name of God, as indicated that she was initially already rectified by the Sephira of Chesed, which is identified with the divine name Kale, as is written, the Chesed of God is the whole day.
And so where this leaves us, that this is our third week of learning this. And as we went through, people had questions and comments, but about Aaron not standing up to the crowd, about David sending Uriah the Hittite to the front, and maybe another few things. But what we see that there is much more to these stories. We see it in a much deeper level to understand why the things happened to them that they did. And it's not just what you see, but there was a much greater thing here with earlier lifetimes, reincarnations, and so many of these people died unnatural death. And we went to Rabbi Akiva too. And one thing was connected with the other, and it was to atone, to repair, to rectify what happened. And in the end, I think everything got cleaned up and all the loose ends were tied.
Got to go. Thank you. See you in a week.
Okay? Yeah, God willing, it should be on for next week.
Yes.
Let me.
Now we're starting next week. We'll probably start a little later.
Yeah, we'll have to see about the time.
Okay.
We'll have
good.
Or earlier. Which one are we going to do?
If we could start 6, then we can finish before Mincha,
That works for me.
or 6:10.
Well, Mincha will probably be 7:00 next.
Probably 7,
Probably 7. So 6. We'll see.
or we can take a poll next week. Okay.
Okay. Have a good week.
Great. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Are you going to the L'chaim? Chaim, you going to L'chaim?
Which one?
Over at LYA. Vavusky.
It's in New York.
I thought I said in LYA.
Lubavitcher Yeshiva in New
Oh,
York.
you see what I read.
Someone told me that they're going to make a mistake.
Yeah. I was going to go anyway. It's okay.
No, that's in New York.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
See you